This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Models Memories Weekly, episode 149. Models Memories is a show about nothing and is filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a show where I talk about my painting, modeling, and Warhammer experiences from the week. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 activities a week. How? Could I possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, Games Workshop came out with a little Necromunda Assassin, and very sneakily, an entire new faction for Warhammer the Old World or returning faction. But first, have you ever been thinking about squares and figured you needed your own space? Well, Squarespace is here to help. Squarespace makes it easy and fun to dive headfirst into website design with simple to use features and professional support from start to finish. Start by looking through one of their dozens of templates on offer to see which one resonates with you, or create your own using their next-gen Fluid Engine system. Every detail is customizable to fit your website needs. Squarespace also provides a fast solution to creating a storefront online, whether your products are physical, digital, or service-based. Now, selling your custom merchandise is easier than ever with Squarespace. Squarespace offers a free trial for you to dip your feet into and test the waters, and when you're ready to dive in head first, you can type in squarespace.com/EonsOfBattle or use our link below to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. First, let's dive into a little bit of Necromunda. Meet Yagaloth, the Delac bounty hunter who can literally become a shadow. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. He looks kind of cool. I don't know, he doesn't feel super special, and if you scroll all the way down to his artwork is really, really cool. And I think cloth doesn't always translate perfectly to minis, but I feel like the vibe is gone. Like the kind of weird plague doctor-y thing that Delac has got going on, I definitely see it in the artwork. But in the actual mini, he doesn't feel like a particularly special assassin. Maybe if there was like a really nice freehanding on his cloak, maybe something really, really fancy. I do like his little bit of exposed chainmail on his shoulder. But man, he's just not really, he's not Jimmy and my jams, not Flim and my flams, but it's probably because I am an Escher player. I really like the Escher gangers. I have a bunch of the Forge World stuff and I have a bunch of the plastic stuff. And I would love to put them together and to paint them, but I have so many projects going on right now. I've played a few games of Necromunda and it's really, really fun. It reminds me a lot of Kill Team, but it kind of leans into the narrative aspects a lot more, and it's a lot less killy. It's still very killy, but like Kill Team, if one of your little operatives pokes his head out, bang, he's dead, because shooting is absolutely lethal. Where in Necromunda, there's actually rules that kind of help kind of make close combat and shooting both work pretty darn well. You're only allowed to shoot at the nearest thing without a penalty, which is huge. Probably a rule that should have been put into Kill Team. Kill Team is a lot like Warcry, but I feel like Warcry actually works a lot better. Like, I like Kill Team a lot. It's a very sweaty game. Like, you and your opponent are both battling, and if either of you make a mistake, it changes the entire tide of the game. Where I feel like with Warcry, it's a lot more friendly. You can kind of run around the board, especially with some of the secondary missions and stuff that aren't necessarily about killing, but they kind of make the objectives a little bit more interesting. So yeah, I really, really want to get into some Necromunda, but probably not House Delac. House Delac is cool, and I would definitely use those bodies for kit bash fodder, but I don't know, they're just pale robed dudes. Not as cool as like cyberpunk Amazonian babes or Team Goliath with the bulging muscles. Every single one of them is like the Juggernaut from X-Men. I like Necromunda a lot. I got one of the Necromunda video games. I think Gang Wars, it's the first-person shooter one. And it starts you out in like a tutorial level, which was really fun. And then you get into the main menu, which is an interactive main menu. And I'm really bad at video games, so I couldn't figure out how to work the menu. So I'm just walking around to like the gun store and the guy who I think sends you on missions, and I couldn't figure out how to start a mission, so I gave up. So I've got probably 20 minutes in the game, and I'm currently trapped in the menu selection area, but I'll one day I'll figure it out. I'm really bad at video games, but I'll look up a YouTube tutorial. See, but that's the problem. I do look up YouTube tutorials for games, but the people who do the tutorials are good at games, so they wouldn't even think that the menu is hard to navigate. It's such a challenge, but I'll figure it out. But speaking of things that are hard, I spent the entire week morning, noon, and night painting up my new dwarf army for Old World. And it was kind of magical. Also, I'm very proud to say, in my list of models I have painted for 2024, I am already well into the 40s, and it's still January. Feels pretty darn good. I'm really on track to get a lot of models finished this year. But Old World is something kind of interesting because I agreed on a whim to play Old World, and then I saw how expensive the boxes were, and I didn't want to spend that money on the boxes. And so I think I discovered the cheapest way to get into Old World. I reached out to some of my friends, and I actually have some people who have dwarves. And so I was able to put together a whole bunch of really in rough shape dwarf armies. And so I was almost able to build my own Old World starter set out of these junky old minis from friends. And it didn't cost that much. And I think that actually could be a really solid way to get into Old World. Especially because the models, a lot of broken shields, a lot of broken axes, but that's fixable. I feel like getting a really rough shape, like 40k army or Age of Sigmar army is often a little bit harder because the models are much, much better and bigger and more detailed. So if you're missing a really important bit of a modern mini, it kind of ruins it, where if you don't have a dwarf shield, you can just glue anything to his arm, as long as it's something sort of arm shaped, a different shield or a little knife or one of the little musical instruments or a drum. You can make it work, I feel like, on the old models a lot better than you can with modern ones. And so my suggestion, if you want to get into Old World and don't want to spend the Games Workshop prices, I would say find a local Discord group or your friends and just ask around. And this is a two-part strategy, but ask around to see if they just have old high school models that they've got kicking around. Now, the part 2 to this plan is you're probably not going to get the army you want. You're going to have to look for an army of opportunity. I originally wanted to collect Tomb Kings, but I wasn't going to buy the big box, and I still can't get a word back from my cousin, who may or may not have a Tomb Kings army, but I got some dwarves. And I didn't have any plans to collect any dwarves, but all of a sudden, when the opportunity arose, I'm like, I can play the dwarves. I'm a little bit of a dwarf myself. It's really, really fun. And so I've kind of grown into it. And on that video, me painting the army, I asked for suggestions of what grudge should my army have against Sean's Grail Knights. And people came through. A lot of really, really good suggestions. I think Yo Mama Jokes was a big one. But two people commented a really, really good suggestion that the Bretonnians commissioned my dwarves to build them a castle. And they did, and they stiffed them 30 pieces of silver, which is probably chump change. That probably doesn't matter at all. But I love that just that little disrespect has led to a giant war between my dwarves and Sean's Bretonnians. I think that is a wonderful idea. And I studied architecture. I have done tons of architectural drawings. And so I love the idea of on that banner, doing a little architectural drawing of a castle and then surrounding it by 30 pieces of silver. It just paints the picture and tells the story. I think that is a really, really cool narrative element of what is going on. And apparently somebody else who is in the know of lore said that green dwarves actually happen to live close by to the Bretonnians. So I accidentally created a very appropriate color scheme for what's going on in my basement right now. It's a lot of fun. The dwarves are really, really cool. I don't currently have the rules. I actually have to wait for Sean to get his Bretonnian box, because his box is going to come with the Forces of Order book that's going to have my dwarf army in it. But also, I didn't realize Games Workshop is not bringing back every single Old World faction. It's a little bit confusing how and why they're making these decisions, but they actually are all getting rules. So if you have anything, you can play Old World. The factions that are going to be getting PDF rules are Lizardmen, Dark Elves, Vampire Counts, Ogre Kingdoms, Skaven, Demons of Chaos, and the Chaos Dwarves. So technically, all of those guys are actually a lot more playable right today than some of the real factions coming back from Games Workshop, because you can just download these rules right now as opposed to waiting to get your hands on one of the army books. Some of these make sense. The Lizardmen literally exist in Age of Sigmar as is. So it would be weird to keep two different sets of miniatures around that are exactly the same. It's kind of the same for the Skaven, although Skaven kind of fit well into Old World, into token-esque fantasy. I think a lot more than the Tomb Kings. Like in the fantasy genre that Old World lives in, I feel like some armies work really, really well and some armies just look a little out of place. The elves obviously work perfectly. The dwarves, the humans. It'd be really fun if the halflings came back. I swear I can't find them. I can't find them anywhere, but I swear there used to be miniatures of halflings riding geese. And they were just really funny. I saw them once in like a book, probably in the Old World rule book, probably like 8th edition or 7th edition, but I haven't been able to find the hide nor hair of those models, and I'd love to see them again. The Dark Elves, Vampire Counts, the Chaos Dwarves. The Chaos Dwarves are really, really cool. They have trains, sort of. They have these war rigs that are designed to kind of link up and look like trains. Those guys are really, really cool, and I'd be surprised if Old World does really, really well, which probably won't. I would be really surprised if the Chaos Dwarves don't come back with like brand new minis, because that just seems super cool. And like there's a lot of room left to dive into Chaos Dwarves, where regular dwarves, they're kind of all done. You got your guys with shields, you got your guys with guns, you got your cannons, they got their quadcopters, because somehow helicopters are a very dwarf thing apparently, but I feel like the dwarves are a little bit done, where Chaos Dwarves, there's a lot of room left to dive into Chaos Dwarves. But speaking of Chaos Dwarves, you can now buy Old World, and they're bringing back some made-to-order stuff. Bretonnian Lord on Pegasus, the Bretonnian Lord and Battle Standard Bearer on war horses. I love a name that is a sentence. It's kind of great. And then they got some old Bretonnian paladins on foot, which boy, oh boy, do they show their age. Ooh, another thing, speaking about Old World and getting secondhand minis, there's kind of two different eras of Old World. There's Old World Metal and then Old World Plastic. And Old World Metal is kind of better. Like the metal sculpting was really, really good at the point where Games Workshop kind of dropped it in favor of plastic, which makes sense for scalability. You just can't really scale metal production. But I have a bunch of metal dwarves and I have a bunch of plastic dwarves. And the metal dwarves are really, really nice, but they're so tiny. They're even smaller than the plastic dwarves. And the early plastic stuff from Games Workshop is bad. I mean, probably the early plastic stuff from anyone is bad, but it's a little like, I feel like if you can put together an army, the plastic is gonna be cheaper than the metal. But if you can put together a ultra classic retro metal Old World army, I feel like that's the way to get the most out of Old World. That's the best way to have it feel really, really different. Like Mantic Kings of War, you can just buy any fantasy army, and for not very much money. Like $500 will get you an Old World army, but $500 of Mantic will get you a table full of models, like corner to corner sea of models. So Kings of War is actually probably a better bet if you just want plastic stuff. But if you want the real Old World, I feel like looking out for those metal models is probably your best bet if you want something really unique and you want like a painting experience that you're not gonna get somewhere else, because like Kings of War and Old Fantasy the Old World, kind of the same sort of deal when you're getting into the plastics. Also returning and made to order, Damsel of the Lady. Damsel of the Lady, that probably has some significance that I don't know about. And you got some Tomb Kings. It's interesting that these are made to order, not just available, because these are units in the game. And Games Workshop, they sort of promised with this range rotation stuff that they've been doing, that you're gonna get ranged in and ranged out, so you can every now and then place orders for things that they don't currently make or sell. But without like a schedule or a calendar, you can't make any decisions. Like I wonder if anybody has been scouring eBay for Damsel of the Lady, not knowing that Damsel of the Lady was gonna get available to order for a week now, and then it's not gonna be available again for who knows how long. Old World stuff characters are going for big money on eBay. Kind of a little bit more on Troll Trader. Troll Trader still has decent prices. Facebook Marketplace is pretty well cleaned out. But yeah, it's really, I don't like made to order, but I would really like made to order if they actually told us what was gonna be made to order, even if it was just like a hint. Like, by the way, February is gonna be some Tomb Kings and some Bretonnians. I'm like, good. Then I'll keep a little bit of cash free that month to see if they have any of the things that I want. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to hunt I'm gonna have to search the realms to see if I can actually get my hands on these minis or find a cool proxy or 3D print something. Like, there's a lot of options, and hoping that Games Workshop will reprint something I feel like is not really an option. But speaking of reprinting, I'm a follower of the Warhammer community. I read most of the articles, but one of the articles series that I've kind of fallen off on is the Old World Almanacs. Just because I don't want to like piecemeal the lore. Like one day I'll just binge it, or I'll get my hands on an old 8th edition rulebook and I'll just binge the lore. And so I completely missed, and I bet a lot of people missed, that the orcs with a C, are coming back super strong in this article, Old World Almanac, the Orc and Goblin tribes. I didn't click on this article for the longest time until Nick pointed it out to me. Somehow Nick can sniff out an orc. I don't know how he does it, but he knows. He knows when an orcs are talked about from Games Workshop. And yeah, they're coming out full range, their own book, new minis. It's wild. Soon, the world of legend will once again ring out with the rumble of hooves, the clamor of Khopesh on shield, and the sultry melodies of skeletons playing the horn. But we're not stopping with just 2 factions. There are 9 in total receiving a mixture of new, remastered, and classic miniatures, and they're all getting a lot. The Orcs and Goblins Battalion box. When I first saw this box, some things in it are kind of cool, but were the old world were the Warhammer Fantasy Battles orcs just the 40k orcs with different arms? I've been around the 40k orcs. I probably have 60 of them in my army. They kind of hold up a tiny little bit. These are the old orcs. Like, these are the old 40k orcs. Did they share bits, or did they just share, like, the same guy made these and then threw on a little bit of extra scrap armor, and then that became the 40k orcs? Because they look almost exactly the same. These old orcs, with their poppin' booties and their weird posture, they're old. They're very, very old. Some of the other stuff is really cool. The new miniatures are fantastic. There's like an orc war boss and a shaman with a pot grot. If anybody remembers Dominion and pot grot, who's just a little stabba stirring a pot. We got another grot, or probably a snotling, stirring a pot that looks like it's full. Oh no, maybe those are fish heads. It's either he's stirring a fish soup, or he's stirring broken glass into soup, which I could believe either way, that the orcs are eating broken glass. But yeah, the new minis absolutely look fantastic. Although, I kind of wish with Old World, Games Workshop did something different. Games Workshop minis are fantastic. I would say Games Workshop probably does make the best plastics, and they're comparable to some of the other best plastics. Like, a little game I love is Malifaux. Malifaux is making a little boutique, awesome miniature war game, and those minis are super, super fantastic. And I think Games Workshop minis are on par. They're in a different scale. Malifaux is kind of in a little bit more of like a realistic / artsy, like their characters are 9.5 heads tall, but the hands and weapons and feet aren't oversized. They're actually pretty much proportional, where Games Workshop minis are not. But I almost wish that Games Workshop went a little bit more retro with their design. Like, you know, these new minis are probably a lot of parts. I just put together some Lizardmen chameleon blow dart guys, and each guy is like 9 pieces, and it's this big, and it's really, really fussy. I would love Games Workshop to try, like, how good can we make a modern dwarf that's still only 3 pieces of plastic each? I think that would be really, really interesting to see. Like, the best in the industry challenge themselves. Because yeah, they can make a really nice mini and just slice it into a million pieces. But what if they're like, how good? Really, these things are just tokens. How good can we make a dwarf token now compared to how good we could make it 30 years ago? While actually keeping ourselves a little bit confined and constricted. Because when you have those rules in place, you do tend to get better results, because you have to figure it out. You have to make decisions, you have to make concessions. Like, actually having restrictions in place does make for more creativity, not less, usually. So I would love to see them actually come up with an old world art style that's different from 40k and Age of Sigmar and all of their other games. But it does make a lot of sense to just keep going the way that they're going, because their models are very, very good. But yeah, the new minis look very different from the old minis. And speaking of old minis, The stuff that actually comes in the battalion box, it's okay. The dwarves, the old dwarves aren't doing much of anything for me, but I like the chariot riders and the really, really old boars. I like the pig riders. Those guys are really, really fun. Like there's definitely some charm here. I was kind of hoping, because I play dwarves, and dwarves famously hate the orcs. So I thought they might do like another big release with the dwarves alongside the orcs because they hate each other, and so it'd be kind of funny. But it looks like orcs are getting their stuff first and returning resin models. The old Forge World resin stuff and the old metal stuff coming back to life looks really good. It looks a lot more like the old metal than the old plastics because the plastics look bad and the metal looked pretty darn good. But there's some really, really fun stuff. The banner has a dwarf on it. Oh my god, that's so mean. And it looks like they cut the dwarf's beard off. Oh, that is awful. Oh my gosh, the orcs are so mean. Oh, that is terrible. That model is so cool and has got so much fun and history to it. It almost looks like the actual banner itself is a dragon's wing, which is kind of genius. There's a lot of really, really fun stuff tied up in that. And of course, you got some of the really, really big stuff. The Troll Hag. The Troll Hag is kind of a famously gross model. It's really, and that didn't leave that long ago, actually. That model stuck around forever and ever until finally getting discontinued. And of course, the dragon. The dragon that could not possibly hold up that orc because the orc is so big. Like the modern dragon that the orcs ride is like a giant bowling ball. It looks like a cabbage with an orc on top. Where this is just like a normal classic, technically Wyvern, because it only has one pair of legs and then one pair of wings. It doesn't have 4 legs and then 2 wings. And that's the difference. But yeah, some really, really cool stuff. Man, it seems like for orcs, like the rank and flank, the rank and file is just whatever. They're green. And then all of the surrounding stuff is really, really cool, which is a little bit disappointing. But I guess, you find some cool STLs online, or apparently you just use your old 40k orcs because they look exactly the same, and then use that as your rank and file, and then you just load up on the really, really cool stuff. Yeah, the orcs are pretty cool. I love the goblin catapult. That little guy on top waving his little flag is totally just gonna get decked when that catapult arm launches. But of course, they probably have one for every single shot, and they just consider it part of the deal that it takes one. They have to lose one Gretchen every time they have to fire a boulder. These guys are fantastic, super fun. So the orcs are all coming back. Couple of new minis. The new minis are very, very good. Some of the old returning stuff is kind of lame. But then all of the surrounding like Forge World and old metal stuff coming back is really, really good. This gives me a lot of hope. Although the box is probably going to be very expensive. And the box comes with the Arcane Journal. So we're already up to 3 Arcane Journals, which are sort of the codexes. You can play the game with like the Factions of Order and Factions of Destruction army books. Comes with everything you need. But the Arcane Journals come with your named characters and some spells and some special abilities, which is okay. Like you could probably just if you borrowed your buddy's book, you could just probably scribble them in on the side of your book really quick. And I guess the reason that the named characters are in the Arcane Journal is because you're not really gonna be able to get them, especially if Games Workshop continues with their made to order stuff and you don't necessarily know. It seems like they're not made to ordering every single thing. So if you really need one particular hero, you might still have to hunt it down or come up with a good proxy. But yeah, it's kind of surprising that just, boom, here you go. The orcs are here. No fanfare, no really big lead up. I'm interested to see how long it takes for everything else to happen. I'm gonna continue working on my dwarves. I have a ton of stuff. I probably have double what I painted this Wednesday, and I have a bunch of miners, which I'm really excited for. I have 20 miners. And then I've got tons and tons of just regular orc warriors. They got their little axes and their little hammers. And I'm really excited to build some unit fillers because it means I just get to make a little tiny diorama, and then it just plant it right in the middle of the army. It's gonna look really, really cool. It's hard to get a whole army game up and running really, really quickly. I've been working on a few different skirmish games, and even those skirmish games are taking a long time because I tend to go all out when if I only have to paint 5 models, I make it take as long as painting an entire army because I just absolutely cannot help myself. It's like, I only have to paint 5 guys. Of course I'm gonna freehand everywhere possible and do 2 brush blending and non-metallic metal and do custom bases that take 4 hours each for every single guy. It's only 5 guys, it won't take me long at all. And then it takes a really, really long time. Where for an army, sometimes I'll be like, maybe his left glove doesn't need 3 layers of highlighting. Maybe I can leave it at just 2. Which is I kind of put all 3 layers of highlight on my dwarves, and there's still a couple of things that I would love to go back on, and I'm really excited to knock out that banner with the YouTube comment suggestion. That's gonna be really, really fun. The only thing I'm planning on actually purchasing from Games Workshop is some of the helicopters, because I feel like secondhand helicopters, I saw a couple on eBay, and it's like, do I want just the body with 4 broken off missing wings, missing 2 bombs, and no pilot? Can I fudge that to make it work? Or do I just get the kit and have it be nice? I feel like with like fussy vehicles, I feel like it would be actually worth it to give Games Workshop money so that I have a really, really nice ones in my army. Where the rank and file, I can replace spear tips and axe heads. But as excited as I am for Warhammer the Old World, you know what I'm more excited for? That's right, our Patreon. Over there, we have brand new terrain sets every single month, and this month we have the Crashed Spaceship. A absolutely humongous set of terrain, perfect for block and line of sight and adding a fun narrative elements to your games of Warhammer 40,000 or anything else. Warhammer Fantasy Battle with the Crashed Spaceship would be pretty pog. And if you always want to be up to date on the goings on here at Eons of Battle and be entered into our monthly giveaways, this month we're picking 3 followers to receive this month's terrain and 1 follower to receive this month's terrain physically, printed by Only Games. You can follow the link in the description below to sign up to our newsletter. I have a whole bunch of dwarves to paint and to rebuild because a lot of them have to be stripped and fixed, but I am excited for it. Thanks for watching.